Hey YouTube, wanted to show everyone how I made a custom high lift jack rack for my 2015 JK. I saw them online. They're all going for about $100 to get a good quality one, and I figured that I could make one myself for a lot less money. So I was going to show everyone how I did that in case anyone's interested in doing the same thing. To start off, this is basically everything you're going to need. And I got the ruler there to show you the size of everything. These are 5/16. These are 5/16 grade 8 bolts with their washers. This one's a different, it's same thing, but it's just came from a different hardware store, so it's got a coarse thread on it versus the fine thread. That's the only reason why that stands out. So you'll need 5 of those with their washers, and I chose to use lock nuts on them to just so I don't have anything vibrating loose. Then these are grade 8, but it's B7 rod is what it actually is, and you'll need 2 of those, and because these are actually going to be what hold the jack up, and I've cut them to about 3 inches in length roughly is what the rod comes out to be. So this one's a little on the long side. I think I'm going to cut it down just a little bit. And I've also ground the bolt head down a little bit there. You can see it's shiny there, and ground it down a little bit on that side too. And you'll see why later, because it just helps the jack slide up on it a little bit more. The next thing you'll need is this piece of steel. This is 1/8 inch thick steel. It's 3 inches. You can buy it. I bought it at Lowe's for it's 3 inches across, and I cut it to 11 3/4 of an inch. So I cut it to 11 3/4, and then of course I drilled these holes in it here, and you'll need to probably mount as you're putting things on the vehicle. You'll need to mark your holes. I don't want to tell anybody where to drill the holes, but so you have to have 4 holes, and I took a Dremel with a tungsten carbide bit and cut this notch here, and you'll see what that's for later as well. So again, it's a 11 3/4 inch tall, and just so you see the reference, 3 inches in width, and I'll explain what the purpose of this is later. Now for the part that goes to the Jeep, got these guys, and these are, the sticker's not so torn up. They are 6 by 1 1/8, and they've got 3 holes on each side, but the holes are drilled in the center, not offset. But you're going to have to take one of the holes on the end and slot them out. Again, that can be done with a Dremel. I kind of boogered that one up a little bit. This one is a little bit better, but that can be done with a Dremel. And the reason is this is actually what's going to go on the tailgate. You'll have your tailgate bolt's going to go here, but it doesn't quite match up with the 3rd hole. The tailgate on the JK, at least my JK, it's a little bit wider. So you just notch it out there, and that way you can still stick your bolt through it. I'm going to use the original tailgate bolts that came on the JK right now. They're 8.8 metric, which is about a grade 5 for US. But I'm going to probably upgrade that to I think it's 10.9 in metric later to make it a little bit stronger. But as far as having enough thread, there is enough thread on the stock bolts for it to work. And then the final piece, you have to make this, and this as you can tell, this is my workshop, and these are my dogs. And so there's not really, I don't have much of a workshop to work with. So this was done with a hammer and a vise. If I actually had a real machine shop or a better workshop with a press in it, this could have come out a lot cleaner. But I'll show you what this piece is for as well later. Again, this is 1 1/2 inches wide, and it's just a piece of, again, 1/8 inch steel, 1 1/2 inches wide, and it's about, the length I used, let's see, that's 1 inch, is probably roughly 5 1/2 inches or so. It doesn't necessarily need to be this long. I left it this long for a reason. And again, whenever I put it together, it'll make more sense. And again, these two holes here are drilled. This is 5/16, and this is 3/8. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, this B7 rod is 3/8. I went a little bit thicker on that so that it would have a little more strength holding up the jack. And of course, when you put the B7 rod in through one end, you have to drill this one of these holes out on this a little bit wider for your B7 rod to fit through, because these holes are drilled out to 5/16 and a B7 rod will not, or the 3/8 rod will not fit through the normal hole. So you have to drill one of these out a little bit wider, and as I put this all together, it'll make a lot more sense. So anyways, these are all the parts that I am using, and it shouldn't cost much, especially if you have a lot of it just laying around. I'm sure a lot of people have just stock steel just laying around. I think these are like, I don't know, $4, $5 at Lowe's. Not very expensive. These bolts, you can get all that for just, I think, like $8 or so at any hardware store. So it's really not expensive. I think the most expensive part was this. I think this rod, which came in a 6-foot section, actually no, it was 36-inch section, excuse me, was like $6. So I think this rod was the most expensive part of this whole process. So anyways, I'm going to paint it now, and then I'm going to put it together after the paint dries. I'm going to put it together on my vehicle to show everyone how it goes together. So we'll check back in there. Okay, we're back, and I'm getting ready to install everything after the paint has dried. And the first thing to do is take your spare tire off. Makes it a little easier to work. And the next thing we'll do is remove these 4 bolts on the tailgate hinge so we can install the L brackets, the angle irons. Alright, so I'll be back in just a second. Okay, I just wanted to show everybody that I haven't tightened this bolt up yet, but I don't know if I'm able to show it with this camera or not. There we go. So there's still threads, about maybe a 1/4 inch of thread. It's not showing up well here at night, but the bolt hasn't been tightened up yet, but it's pushed all the way up to where the threads are starting, and there's still a good 1/4 inch of thread left to go for it to be tightened down, and that's with the first bracket in place. And of course all the other bolts are the same way. So you can reuse the stock bolts, but like I already said, I'm going to probably replace these bolts with grade 10.9 hardware whenever I can get by another hardware store. Okay, so now I got the first 2 brackets on, and just as a little recap, that's really bright. Just as a little recap, the slotted hole for the bolts is going right here. That hole that we slotted earlier is there and here. And of course you can just use the standard hole. It's a 5/16 drill, and this is a 13mm head, by the way, for these bolts. So you can use a 13mm or a 1/2 inch drive, might fit it. So anyways, and then you have to go with your 3/8 inch hole that you drilled here, and then a 5/16 hole here. And the 3/8 inch hole here is because this is where a B7 rod is going to go through, and so this hole has to be drilled out a little bit larger because this is one of the supports where the actual jack is going to go. Now I've left these bolts loose right this second. They're still just a little loose because we got to put that plate on. And the reason for the plate is that you could, in theory, use these holes here to hold the jack on. The problem with that is that that's a really weak setup. What that does is it turns these into levers, where it's acting as though a lever by torquing on these bolts in a way that they're not really designed to be torqued on. Bolts are meant to be pulled and to have shearing forces as well. So, a weight can come straight down on the bolt, or a weight can be pulled against the bolt. but they're not really meant to take a lever force, because that unevenly loads the bolts. And so, for instance, if I were to just put the jack on it out here, the top of the bolt is going to receive a whole lot of force, and the bottom of the bolt's not going to receive much force, so it's actually going to run the risk of just breaking the heads off. Whereas what I've done here is I'm going to put this plate on, and it's not going to allow it to twist. That plate is going to keep it from making a twisting motion. So instead, the weight is only going to be allowed to come straight down and straight out on the bolt, which is how bolts are designed to work. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Whenever I put this plate on it, it'll make more sense. So like right now, this will move in this lever motion on both of these. But after I put the plate on, it won't do that, and I'll demonstrate that here in just a second. Okay, so I got the plate up. I haven't tightened anything up yet, but I just wanted to take a second and tell you, whenever you are mocking this up for the first time, in order to figure out where to drill your holes, you need to bolt these L brackets on, and then after you bolt the L brackets on, you just are going to need to take your plate, your 3-inch wide plate, hold it up to your holes, and I decided to mount mine flush. Let me get the light over here. I decided to mount mine flush to the tailgate there, just because I knew I was going to run in with some interference with the jack here. So I moved mine as close to the tailgate as possible, and use that as a way to just use the marker. And plus, over here on the very edge, those holes are going to get really thin, so you can't really come too far out away from the tailgate hinge. Otherwise, it's going to get you're going to run out of metal for this hole. You're going to run out the edge there. So, anyways, that's what you got to do, and then just mark your holes and drill your holes. I'm sure you guys know how to do that. So now what I need to do is tighten up these 4 bolts on the plate, and then after I tighten those up, then I'll tighten up the bolts on the tailgate as well. So, and you might have noticed in my first pictures before I painted this up, I actually had this plate mounted on the other side, but I decided that it looked a little better having the plate on this side instead. So, I don't think it's going to make a difference. If it does, then I guess I'll have to take it off and remount it again. So anyways, be back in a minute. Okay, now I've got everything torqued down, and just wanted to show you. So basically now whenever weight is applied out here on the ends of these, instead of the force just turning into a lever and running the risk of breaking the bolt heads off, now what happens is you have this support here across this that prevents these bars from twisting. And so instead, they're not, because of this piece here, the levers cannot just simply twist. And so instead, they have to take force straight down or directly out. So when I apply the jack to it, it's not going to run the risk, or as much of a risk at least, as it would be without this here. So if you look at most of the designs like Rugged Ridge or Terraflex or whoever else, they all use some sort of piece like this to prevent the bolts from taking a torque load like that. So anyways, I hope that makes sense of why this piece is here. So this is a pretty integral piece, so if anybody tries this, to make sure to put something there like that. Otherwise it'll significantly weaken the design of this structure. So anyways, everything is tightened down, and next thing needs to do is put on the mounts for the jack itself, where the jack's going to mount up. And as you can see, like right now, this is really strong already. Doesn't flex. It's very, very stout as it is. So now I've got to put the mounts on for the jack and show you how it works. Okay, I got everything mounted up now. So the B7 rod, and I trimmed it off a little bit, but it looks like I could have trimmed it off some more. I trimmed it off before I mounted it up, and I didn't want to cut too much but it certainly looks like I could have taken a little bit more of this excess off right here. So anyways, the jack, if you remember earlier, I showed a piece of ground head where I ground the head off here and on the bottom as well. The jack is actually going to sit on this nut on the top here and on the bottom there. And what I'm going to use is another nut and washer, and they are going, so I'm going to slide the jack on, slide a washer on, and use another lock nut. What I've done is I've really torqued these two down so they're not likely to turn. I put a lot of torque on them, and whenever I put this one on with a lock nut, I'm not going to torque it as much. That way, whenever I want to take it off, I don't have to worry about this rod turning because these are going to have more torque on them. And again, just to show you how it's mounted on this side, and I put this one, this is just how I did it, I put it on the inside because I want the jack to be a little bit farther away from this mounting plate. I just need a little more space here. So I mounted this one on the inside versus the outside just to give me that extra, oh, what is that, 3/16 of an inch, I guess. That's what that piece is, I think. So anyways, then down here, and I forgot to mention this in the earlier part of the video, I have this spacer here. This spacer, and we're losing daylight here. Let's see if I can get some more light. Oop. Let's see. Let me go down here. There we go. That helps a little bit. Okay, so I have a spacer. I think this is a 1-inch spacer. I think that's what it comes out to. And there's a washer on each side of it just to help share the load, because again, same thing here. The jack is actually going to rest on top of this bolt. And so you can see I've turned this bolt flat. So, you know, you've got a flat head here, and if for the jack to actually rest on. And same thing up here. The bolts are turned flat. So the jack's going to rest on that. I'm going to take another washer, another lock nut, same thing, and tighten it up. So it's going to squeeze the jack here. And again, same thing here. There's that B7 rod right here. This is really torqued down, and that way whenever I tighten it up on this side, you know, I'm not going to torque it as much, but it's going to have a lock nut, so I don't have to worry about it backing off. And that way when I want to take it off, this should stay in place, and I should just be able to take that off and get my jack off, and everything will still be in the same place. So anyways, so this is what it looks like. So I get the focus. There it goes. Yeah, so this is what the jack mount looks like right now. And now I'm going to put the jack on it and show how it works. Okay, now I've got everything mounted up, and you can see there's the bolt that I put there, or excuse me, the nut, and there's a nut there. Let me get the light down here so we can see. There it is. And so there's a nut there, and you can see I put it in the 4th hole, and the jack boot needs to be up, was it 5 holes? I think that's what it is. There's 1, 2, 3, and the bolt's in the 4th, so yeah, 5th hole. So the jack boot has to be up 5 holes. You can see we do have clearance there underneath, and this is what it looks like from this side. So yeah, and then the top of the jack sticks up, you know, just above the top of the Jeep. So of course, you know, it's no higher than my antenna. So you know, I might take the ring off the top there, or turn it down or something, just in case I go into any parking garages. You know, I don't have to worry about the jack catching on something that way, because pretty much the top of the actual jacking part is almost flush with the top of the Jeep. The one thing I did notice that changed whenever I moved the support plate here to the other side. It was when I first mocked it up before I did this video, this plate was on the inside, and it was taking up a gap right here. So this nut, or this bolt, excuse me, the bolt head was resting against the jacking part. And so whenever I mocked it up, everything was great. Now I've mocked it up and the jack turns. So I think what I'm going to do is, instead of moving this plate, because I like the way the plate looks, I don't know if it shows up well on the camera, but I just think it has a cleaner look with the plate being mounted on the outside of the brackets here versus mounting them on the inside. It's just my opinion. The only difference it makes is the jack now rattles. And but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some washers and just take this bolt out and stack some washers here to push that bolt head in just a little bit to prevent this from twisting. So that way, whenever this pulls in tight, this will rest against it, and it won't be rotating back and forth like it currently is. That, or you could just take this plate, and that 1/8 inch is all it needs, a little 1/8 inch on this side, and that would solve your problem as well. But other than that, it turned out really well. And down here, let me show you what that part was that I had to grind out. It was for the I don't know what you call this lever, but it switches it from going up to jacking down, and you can see it's notched out. I just mocked it up, traced it perfectly around, and ground it out with a Dremel. So, you know, that's all it is that holds that. So anyway, yeah, and you can see down here, there's the spacer. And the reason why I left the tab, this tab part hanging down, is you can see it sticks down over the boot. And because it sticks down over the boot there, it prevents you from, say, inadvertently going over a big bump, or say if you jumped your Jeep or did something crazy, it prevents the boot from shifting up, because this tab is here in the way, and so the jacking part of the boot can't ratchet itself up by any means. So again, it's just something that I left in this piece right here. You know, you could cut it off if you don't like the way it looks, or leave it in if you don't mind. But so anyways, yeah, that's just the one little thing I need to fix there is that rotating motion, because I'm sure that would get annoying going down the road. So I'm going to fix that, and then I'm also going to put my spare tire back on to show you that you can still take the jack on and off with the spare tire on. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so I've come back out. I got another light, which might be a little easier to see with the camera, and I'm going to see if I can do this with one hand and film. So I got my stock spare tire mounted up, and this is a 32, and so you can see that the 32, I still got room to get a wrench or get a socket wrench in there. But of course, if you've got a bigger tire, then you might have issues with this. You know, I could see this probably working just fine with a 33. You know, 34 maybe. I've got 34s on mine right now, but you know, a 35, I don't know if that's going to work with this particular mount. You have to figure something else out. You know, but so you can see the bolts do come off even with the spare tire mounted up. And so I'm trying to do this with one hand. Okay, because of course everyone's going to be like, it looks great, but does it actually function? Okay, so now I got the bolts off. Now it's a question of, does it come off? And let's see if I can grab this with one hand. And yes, so it does come off. It's a little hard to handle that jack with one hand, but as you can see with the stock tire that the vehicle comes with, it does come off, and of course you can see the tire still has, you know, almost all of its tread still on it, so it does work. Now, of course, the next thing is people are going to wonder about the plastic pieces. They should fit. You're going to cut a hole in it. You're going to cut a hole in it, and you're going to probably grind a little bit right here for the plate. That, or you can grind the plate, whichever. But you're going to probably have to slice your piece right there in order for it to fit, or grind the support bracket here for it to fit better. You know, you're going to do something, and I'll figure that out later, but right now I just wanted to get it mocked up and do the video. So anyways, I'm going to put some washers here to fix that rattling problem, and then I'm also going to show everybody that it opens up and doesn't bust out your tail light. So I'll be back here in just a second. Okay, so I have stacked up some washers. Let's see if I can get the lights to cooperate with me. I just took a couple washers that I had laying around and stacked those up there, and they rest against the jack handle, and we no longer have that annoying rattle sound. Now, of course, the handle itself rattles, but that's just because it's a high lift jack and they rattle. So anyways, so this is what it looks like after it is all said and done. And personally, I don't think it looks that bad for me having made it in my backyard. Well, it's not even really a backyard, it's a patio with hand tools, with a hand drill and a hand Dremel. I think it turned out pretty well. The only other thing, of course, to do is cut the plastic pieces to put the plastic covers back on it, so that way, you know, it looks a little cleaner. But you know, with any one like the rugged ridge mount that you would buy, you still have to cut the plastic pieces anyways, because the bolts have to go through it. So it, you know, regardless, if you're going to mount your high lift jack this way back here, you're going to have to either replace the hinges altogether or cut the plastic covers that go over the hinges. So that's just part of putting the jack back here. You know, of course, there's always the hood mounts, but you know, I didn't particularly like that idea. So anyways, so yeah, it's a very sturdy mount. Of course, the rattling sound again is from the boot of the jack rattling around, which, you know, I think that's just how high lift jacks are. I've never had one that didn't rattle. So yeah, and then of course, you know, I might get rid of my, you know, arm keeper there and actually get a real rubber one sometime. But other than that, yeah, I thought it turned out really well, and it's certainly, you know, the strength of it is certainly really quite nice, and you know, but the thickness of this arm here, I think it's 3/16 if I had to guess. I didn't actually measure it, but it's certainly, you know, as far as like its flexibility from side to side, it's pretty rigid, because, you know, it's pulling against two of those, and I think it works quite well. Oh, and of course, the final test, I have to show everyone that it will open up, and that's all the way open, and you've still got, well, I don't know, you've got plenty of room without it busting out your tail light or anything. So yeah, and of course it clears the bumper. So yeah, oh, there's one thing I didn't notice, but yeah, it does clear. It just barely rubs against the top of your plastic bumper here, but that's not really that big of a deal. It's a bumper. So anyways, so that's that. And again, the only caveat with doing this is that you really can't do it with a big tire on it. end up putting this on and you do have, you know, a larger spare tire back here, you might be able to get it to fit, you know, so the jack might go on. But as far as actually getting the jack off and on while the tire is mounted, you might have problems that way. So what you might end up having to do if you do use this idea is, and you have a larger tire, is every time you need to use your jack, you take your spare tire off, and then you can get to your jack that way. You know, that's one way, and of course that's an extra level of security to keep somebody from running off with your jack. What I'm going to probably end up doing is, I don't know, getting a cable lock of some sort, you know, and I don't know, wrapping it around this somehow. You know, the way I look at it is a lock keeps an honest man honest. If somebody wanted to steal the whole vehicle, there's really not a whole lot stopping them from doing that. So anyways, so let me know if you have any comments or suggestions on how to make it better, and hope this helps anybody who was looking at making their own type of mount and didn't want to spend, you know, $100. I think all in all, with the scrap metal and the bolts and all, you know, some people might have all the materials already laying around their house and can do it for free. But you know, most people should be able to do it that work with metal and that have the scrap laying around. You could probably do it for under $20 and extra materials you might not have. So, and again, you know, I did all of this with hand tools, and you know, it turned out, I think it looks pretty good. But if I had a machine shop, you know, I could have made certain things look a little nicer. But anyways, hope everyone likes it, and hope it helps people. Take care.